Hello students, welcome to Zoology Classroom. This is Yal Mahesh, Assistant Professor of Zoology from Tara Government Degree College, Sangareddy. In today's class, we are going to discuss about digestion of cellulose. This topic comes under BSc final year Zoology subject and in 5th. So this particular topic, cellulose digestion, can be studied under two subheadings, cellulose digestion in ruminants and cellulose digestion in non-ruminants. First of all, let us know how the cellulose is digested in ruminants. So digestion in ruminants has led to the development of a specialized stomach in these ruminants. So the ruminant stomach has 4 chambers, whereas other mammals they have got only one chamber in their stomachs. Hence, they are called as monogastric animals. But these ruminants, they are not monogastric animals. Why? Because their stomach has 4 chambers. Whereas in humans and other primates, we are having only one chamber in our stomach. That's why we are called as monogastric animals. But these ruminants, they are not monogastric animals as they are having 4 chambers. And the names of the 4 chambers are rumen is the first chamber, second chamber is the reticulum, and third chamber is omasum, and fourth one is abomasum. So the total abdominal cavity, when we consider about the total abdominal cavity, the total abdominal cavity is occupied, the stomach occupies the 3/4 position, or 3/4 percent of the space is occupied by stomach only in the abdominal cavity. That means stomach is the biggest part or biggest organ in this abdominal region. And this is a ruminant. In this thing, we can see that this area, the total abdominal area, mostly 75% of the abdominal area is occupied by the stomach. In this diagram, the 4 chambers are present in this stomach region. The stomach is occupying most part of the abdomen. 75% of the 75% region of the abdomen is occupied by stomach. So in rumen is the first chamber, and it is the biggest chamber in this stomach, and it is occupying 80% part of the stomach by this rumen only. And it is lying on the left side of the animal, and cellulose will be collected here in this rumen chamber. And for the digestion of cellulose, a lot of water also is required. So water also is stored in this region. And mostly cellulose will be absorbed, mostly cellulose will be digested in this region. And some digestion nutrients, some portion of the digestion nutrients will be absorbed in this region, rumen. So in this diagram, we can see that 4 chambers of the stomach. So we know that what parts are there in the digestive system. Digestive system starts with mouth. Mouth opens into oral cavity, and oral cavity in turn it leads to pharynx region. Pharynx opens into the esophagus. Esophagus in turn it opens into stomach region, and stomach into small intestine, and small intestine into large intestine. Finally, large intestine opens to the anus. So in this diagram, we are seeing this is the esophagus. So esophagus opens into the stomach. So that this total portion, it is the stomach of the rumen. So as we have already discussed, the first chamber of these ruminants is rumen. So esophagus, it is opening into this rumen. The total portion, this is the rumen. It is on the left side of the animal. So this part, this part, this part, the total part, this part, from this region, the total part, it is the mostly 80% of the stomach region is occupied by rumen chamber only. And it is on the left side. Finally, this rumen chamber, finally it opens into the reticulum, which is on the right side of the animal. Total left side will be occupied by this rumen only, and it is opening into the second chamber, that is reticulum, which is on the right side of the animal. And reticulum chamber, finally, it opens into the third chamber, called as omasum. Omasum finally leads into the abomasum, the fourth chamber. And this abomasum, it opens into the small intestine, and small intestine later it opens into large intestine. So in this way, we can see that the arrangement of the four chambers are in the stomach region. So esophagus, the food enters into the esophagus, and the esophagus sends the food into the rumen, and from rumen, the most cellulose and most of the food particles will store in the rumen only for a longer period of time for the digestion. Once the digestion of the cellulose is finished, the next the digested food material again enters into this reticulum part, and from reticulum part again the digested food materials finally they go into omasum, and from omasum they enter into the abomasum. So here, what is the purpose of this rumen is that rumen is storing the food for some time, and finally, as these organisms are they are ruminating or regurgitating the food into their mouth and remasticating. So that total process is called as rumination. So again, when they are ruminating, the swallowed food again it is brought into the mouth through the esophagus only. So again, after remastication is done and regurgitation is done, again the food enters into the rumen. There, the digestion of cellulose will be finished, and when the cellulose digestion is finished, food will be sent into the reticulum. So in this way, rumen is acting like a separate chamber, separate sideway from this digestive system. Actually, the food is supposed to go into the reticulum, and from reticulum to omasum, and from omasum to abomasum, and finally into the small intestine, and later large intestine. But this rumen part is acting as a bypass area. So the cellulose will be stored into this thing, and again the cellulose part or the food will be re-brought into the mouth for the regurgitation, remastication, or rumination process. So once the rumination is done, then the cellulose digestion will be made easy for the microorganisms that are living in the rumen chamber. So these are the four chambers, and their arrangement and their placements are their positions in the stomach. So in this slide, we are seeing the stomach of a monogastric animal. So we are example for monogastric animal. We, the human beings, are example for monogastric animals. So in these organisms, we can see that esophagus is opening into the stomach. The total part is, it is called as stomach. It is a single chamber, but for our convenience, we can divide this single chamber into three regions. Okay, we can classify or we can divide the single chamber into three regions. The upper portion, it is called as esophagus region, which is very near to the esophagus, and second part it is called as cardiac region, and this is the fundic region, and this one is the pyloric region. So pyloric region is close to the small intestine. So in this way, we can divide this monogastric organisms digestive system into esophagus region, cardiac region, and fundus region, and pyloric gland region. So coming to the digestion in ruminants again. So in the rumination, there are 4 steps are there. These 4 steps are called as regurgitation, remastication, reinsalivation, and redeglutition. So first step in the rumination is regurgitation. So what happens in these organisms when they are eating food, they will not chew the food properly. So as they are in a hurry, they just bite the food and they swallow it, and the swallowed food goes into the rumen chamber. So once they finish eating the grass or plant parts, whatever they eat, so after the eating part is finished, they sit somewhere and they will regurgitate. So what is regurgitation? Regurgitation is nothing but due to the reverse peristalsis movements, the food from the rumen chamber again it comes into the mouth. So bringing the food again into the mouth from the rumen chamber is called as regurgitation. So once the taking food is finished, then they will sit somewhere peacefully, and then they do this first process in the rumination, that is regurgitation. So through this regurgitation process, they bring back the food into the mouth, and next step in the rumination is remastication. So in this remastication process, now they will chew the food properly. So in this remastication process, what happens? Liquid will be squeezed and from the bolus, and the boluses will be again, they will be chewed properly, and re-insalivation. So when they are eating food for the first time also, saliva will be secreted onto this food. But once the regurgitation and remastication is done, again the saliva will be poured onto the mouth, which is brought back into the mouth. So this third step is called as re-insalivation. So more saliva will be added to the remasticated food. So with the help of this saliva, food will be made into boluses, and these boluses now they are finely chopped, or now they are finely masticated or finely chewed. So these finely chewed boluses, with the aiding of saliva, they will take the forms of boluses. And later, fourth step is redeglutition. So redeglutition is nothing but re-swallowing the bolus particles, or bolus. Uh, so and the boluses and the liquid saliva, all those things again, they will be re-swallowed, and the re-swallowed food again reaches the rumen. So these are the four steps in the rumination process. So rumination, what is the use of rumination? What happens in this rumination actually? So rumination allows the animal to forage and eat food rapidly. So when they are eating food, they will do it very rapidly and then store for later digestion. So and during rumination, again, they will bring back the food into the mouth, and they will now properly chew the food. And this re-chewing or remasticating reduces the particle size of the food material. So only small particles leave the reticulorumen. So and so reticulorumen. So reticulum is the second part. So from rumen to reticulum, only small particles, finely chopped or finely masticated small particles only will enter into the reticulum part from the rumen. So for that thing, rumination is very, very essential. And this rumination increases surface area for microbial attachment and digestion or fermentation also. So the digestion of cellulose actually takes place in rumen only, and rumen is giving space or place for the many microorganisms. These microorganisms, they will help in the digestion of the cellulose. So, but for the proper digestion of cellulose, surface area for the attachment of microbes should be increased. So when the food particles are finely masticated, finely chewed, then the surface area for the attachment of these microorganisms will be increased. When the surface area for microbial attachment is increased, that results in the proper digestion of the cellulose. And this digestion occurs in the presence of, in the absence of oxygen. Hence, this is also called as fermentation. And this rumination also helps in the breaking down of the impervious plant walls. So we know that these ruminants, they depend on plant food. So, and all the plant cells, they are having rigid cell walls on the outside of their cells. so that these rigid cell walls will be broken down with the help of this rumination process. And further stimulation of saliva flow. So when the organism eating food for the first time, saliva will not be poured in large quantities. But when rumination is done, this rumination process stimulates the salivary gland so that lot of amount of saliva will be poured onto the mouth, onto this food. And this saliva helps in the digestion of the food. So for the stimulation of saliva flow also, to increase the saliva flow also, this rumination process helps a lot in this organ. And rumination, in the rumination process, rumen digestion, so and fermentation, what is happening in these organisms? So degradable food will be entering into the rumen, and in the rumen microorganisms are there, and these microorganisms, they act on this degradable food, they ferment this food, and they will digest this food. So as a result of this digestion, what happens? Carbon dioxide, volatile fatty acids, microbial cells, ammonia, methane, heat, long chain fatty acids, and hydrogen sulfide will be released from this digestion of this cellulose. So in this thing, we are seeing that some items are mentioned in red color, and some are in black color, and some are in green color. So products in red are used by the host animal. So this carbon dioxide, ammonia, and H2S, these things will be utilized by the host animal. That means ruminant animal. Products listed in black and green are not usable by the animal. So the host will not use these volatile fatty acids, microbial cells, and long chain fatty acids. These will not be utilized by the host animal or ruminant animal. Products listed in green are primary energy losses from the rumen. So this methane and heat. So these two things are mentioned in green color, shown in green color, and these are lost by the animal. Methane will be exhaled to the outside through their nostrils, and the heat also will not be utilized by the animal. So these two things are considered as primary energy losses to the animal. So there is a symbiotic relationship in between this ruminant animal and the organisms, microorganisms that are inhabiting the rumen of this animal. So what is the symbiotic relationship? How both of them are benefiting? Let us see. So microorganisms provide to the ruminant. So what is the benefit of microorganisms to the ruminant? So these ruminants, they will, the microorganisms, they will digest the cellulose and hemicellulose, which is not possible for the ruminant. So without the help of microorganisms, ruminant cannot digest the cellulose and hemicellulose. And provision of high quality protein. So these microorganisms, they will produce a high quality proteins, and these high quality proteins will be utilized by the animal later. And production of volatile fatty acids. So as we have seen in the previous slides, as a result of the cellulose digestion, volatile fatty acids will be liberated or generated, but these volatile fatty acids are not utilized by the ruminant. Instead, these VFA volatile fatty acids will be utilized by the microorganisms. They will use these volatile fatty acids, and they will convert them into proteins in their cells. And these microorganisms, some of the microorganisms, they also produce B vitamins, and these B vitamins will be provided to the ruminant animal. And detoxification of toxic compounds. If any toxic materials enter into the rumen through the food, and those toxic materials will be detoxified by this microorganism. So these are the benefits to the ruminant from these microorganisms. And what are the benefits ruminant is providing to the microorganism? So ruminants are providing housing or space or place for these microorganisms, and garbage removal also will be done by the ruminants. And ruminants are providing nutrients also to the microorganisms, and optimal environment for growth. So microorganisms require some special kind of environment and pH and all those situations or conditions. And all these conditions are provided by the ruminants to these microorganisms. In this way, ruminants are helping the microorganisms and microorganisms are helping the ruminants. Thus, both are helping each other. That's why this relationship is called as symbiosis. So, and what type of microorganisms are living in this rumen of these ruminants? So, bacteria, 60 to 90% of the microorganisms are bacteria only. And protozoans, they occupy 10 to 40% of the total microbial population in the rumen chamber. And fungi, they contribute to 5 to 10% of the microbial population in the rumen chamber. And generation interval, and bacteria, they will reproduce they will generate the next generation very rapidly. That means for every 20 minutes, next generation will be produced. In the case of protozoans, it is 8 to 36 hours time will be taken for the generation of next generation protozoans. And in case of fungi, this period is around 24 hours. So coming to the bacteria, more than 200 species of bacteria are living in this chamber, and 25 species at concentrations of more than 10 to the power of 7 per milliliter. So a single milliliter liquid is inhabiting 10 to the power of 7 10 to the power of 7 microorganisms or bacteria. So that means a lot of bacteria are inhabiting this rumen chamber, and 99.5% of these bacteria are obligate anaerobes. And in this bacteria, cellulitic bacteria are there. The cellulitic bacteria only, they are very helpful to the ruminants. Why? Because these cellulitic bacteria only, they can digest the cellulose. So they are also called as fiber digester. Why? Because they are digesting the cellulose fiber. And they digest the cellulose, hemicellulose. They require a pH of 6 to 7. And they utilize nitrogen in the form of ammonia. And they require sulfur for the synthesis of some sulfur-containing amino acids like cysteine and methionine. And these cellulitic bacteria produce acetate and propionate. A little butyrate and carbon dioxide also will be produced by these organisms. And these acetate, propionate, and butyrate, they are called as VFR, volatile fatty acids. And predominate in the rumen of cows and fed roughage diets. So these cellulitic bacteria are predominating the rumen of cows that are fed with roughages. So, in the second type of bacteria that inhabit the rumen are amylolytic bacteria. So these amylolytic bacteria, they digest starches and sugars, and they require pH 5 to 6. They also utilize nitrogen as ammonia as peptides. They produce propionate and butyrate and lactate, and they are predominant in rumens of cows fed grain diets. So the cows that are fed with grain diets, they will have more of these amylolytic bacteria. And rapid change to grain diet causes lactic acidosis in these organisms. And a third category of bacteria, methane producing bacteria, they produce methane. And this methane will be utilized by the microorganisms for the energy needs. And this methane replaces the loss of energy to the animals. And this methane also will be released to the exterior through their nostrils by a process called as eructation. And next category of microorganisms, that is protozoa. So the protozoans, they are large size protozoans are living in these organisms. Their size varies from 20 to 200 microns in size, and ingest bacteria and feed particles. These protozoans, they also ingest bacteria and food particles also. So they engulf feed particles and digest carbohydrates and proteins and fats in those food particles. And numbers affected by the diet. So depending on the diet, the protozoans number will be varying depending on. So here is some photographs of a protozoan that is Enterodymium, which are inhabiting the rumen of these microorganisms. Next, third category of microorganisms inhabiting the rumen are fungi. So the existence known for about 25 years only. Till 25 years ago, we are not aware that fungi are also living in the rumen of these animals. So these fungi are very low in number in this chamber and digest recalcitrant fibers. So here in this slide, we can see clearly that what happening, how this cellulose is being digested in these animals. So the animals, they will eat grass and saliva and urea also. So in the commercial dairy farms, some urea also will be provided through the feeding to these animals. So this urea will be utilized by these microorganisms for proper propagation or for proper development. So urea will not be utilized by the animal, but urea is helpful to the microorganisms for their growth, normal growth or better growth. So for that purpose, for the betterment of bacterial growth, urea also will be given through the feed to these animals. So all this grass, saliva and urea will be entering into this rumen chamber. So in the rumen, cellulose will be converted into glucose with the help of bacteria. And in this process, what's happening? These bacteria, they will utilize the glucose and they grow in number. So bacteria, they will grow in number. So bacteria grown in number means grown bacteria, they're also having a lot of proteins in their body, in their cells. That means protein generation or protein synthesis also will be done. And the urea and grass proteins are also will be utilized by this bacteria. In turn, they will grow in number. And all these things also, they will be converted into proteins in this bacteria. So urea that is provided through the food to this animal will be utilized for the synthesis of proteins in this bacteria body. So, and again, in this process of cellulose digestion, as we have already seen, this bacteria, by this fermentation process, they will produce methane, carbon dioxide, and fatty acids. So, and all these fatty acids are volatile fatty acids. They will be utilized by this bacteria, and some fatty acids are also directly they will pass through the layer, pass to the next chambers in the stomach, and finally they will also go into this small intestine where these fatty acids are absorbed by this animal. So, in the when this bacteria, okay, the bacteria, they are not going to stay forever in the rumen only. So, as the food passes to the next chamber, some of the bacteria, especially the old bacteria, fully grown bacteria, they also pass through the into the next chamber. So in that way, when the bacteria, when they come into the later chambers, there the bacteria will be digested by the digestive juices of the ruminant. So then what's happening? The bacterial proteins are all digested and finally they are converted into amino acids. And these amino acids will be absorbed by the animal. So in this way, how these bacteria are being useful to the animal is that bacteria are digesting the cellulose. Okay, the cellulose is converted into glucose and some part of the cellulose digestion is providing fatty acids also. These fatty acids also later will be absorbed by this animal and some of the fatty acids will be absorbed by the bacteria. Glucose is also absorbed by the bacteria and urea and some proteins which are present in the plant food or grass. These proteins are also utilized by the bacteria for the production of. So in this way, all these things are utilized by the bacteria. So bacteria is growing in size, bacteria is growing in number by utilizing all these things. Okay, later once the bacteria, when they overgrown in number, some whole bacteria or some fully grown bacteria, they pass to the next chambers of the stomach. So when they go into the last chamber of the stomach, that is real stomach, true stomach, there the bacteria will be digested by the digestive enzymes of the animal. So in this way, bacteria are growing in number by utilizing all these cellulose and all these grass proteins. Later, they are being digested by the animal and they are being helpful to the. So in this way, the animal is not directly digesting the cellulose. Indirectly, bacteria are digesting the cellulose, and this bacteria will be digested and utilized by the animal, ruminant animal. So next chamber, second chamber, this is reticulum. This is very thick. It is honeycomb shape, and it is makes up 5% of the stomach in this animal, and it traps any foreign material that an animal may picks up accidentally or unknowingly, and all these foreign particles will be stored in reticulum. And as it is very thick in size, these are foreign materials like stones or sand, all those things are not going to damage the reticulum. And some nutrients are also will be absorbed by this reticulum. And this reticulum also helps in opening and closing of the rumen chamber. And third chamber is omasum, and it is on the right side of the animal. It occupies 8% of the stomach region. It is also known as mini piles. Why? Because it looks like pages of a book, and in omasum, absorption of nutrients also takes place to some extent. And fourth chamber is abomasum. This is our true chamber, true stomach. It is considered as true stomach. Why? Because real enzymes, all gastric enzymes are reduced and poured into this abomasum only. Here in this chamber only, bacteria will be digested, and true digestion takes place here in this chamber. Next chamber, next is small intestine. It is first part of the intestine. Digestion will be completed in the small intestine region, and absorption also takes place in this region. And it is the longest part of the digestive system. Around 150 feet long will be there, the small intestine. And last part is the large intestine. And there are some parts in this large intestine. They are ileum, cecum, colon, and rectum. And later this large intestine open to the exterior through anus. And this large intestine is helpful by absorbing water and some minerals, and some vitamins also will be absorbed by this large intestine. So this is about the digestion of the cellulose in ruminants. Coming to the digestion of cellulose in non-ruminants, so some animals like rabbit and horses, they are not called ruminants. Why? Because they do not regurgitate, remasticate. So that process is not seen in these animals, hence they are called as non-ruminants. But their food also, most part of their food also is from plant origin only. So they also need to digest the cellulose, but as they are not ruminating, so how they are digesting the cellulose? Let us see. So coming to the digestive system of this this is the first one. This is the digestive system of rabbit, and this is the digestive system of horse. So coming to the digestive system of the rabbit. In this rabbit, we can see that this is the stomach and small intestine, and this is large intestine. So the region where small intestine meets the large intestine, we are having a very specialized chamber called as a cecum. This cecum is very, very enlarged one. In this cecum, lot of microorganisms are inhabiting. and these microorganisms, they will help in the digestion of the cellulose. But what is the saddest part in this thing is that, so microorganisms are not living in the stomach. In the ruminants, microorganisms are living in the stomach. The cellulose will be digested in this region, and when the digested cellulose along with bacteria, when it enters into the small intestine, the total food will be absorbed into the bloodstream. We know that absorption of food takes place in small intestine region only. But here in the case of rabbit, what is happening in rabbit? Digestion of cellulose is taking place once the food is passing through the small intestine. So after the food passes through the small intestine, then only the cellulose is being digested. So digested cellulose cannot be absorbed into the body, into its bloodstream. So here it is not being useful for these animals, as the bacteria are inhabiting after the small intestine in the cecum region. So in this way, they have developed a special type of technique to regain the digested cellulose, that is called as coprophagy. So in this rabbits, we can see that they will form two types of fecal matter. One fecal matter is a very soft one. The soft fecal matter will be produced generally during the night times. So in this soft fecal matter, the digested food materials or digested cellulose will be there, and this soft fecal matter will be eaten by the rabbit. Why? Because it is not willing to lose the digested cellulose and all those things. That's why it is eating its own fecal matter. This process is called as coprophagy. So again, when they ate their own shit or fecal matter, the digested food materials, again, they are passing through the stomach and small intestine. When they are passing through the small intestine, then those digested food materials will be absorbed by the small intestine into the bloodstream. So by adopting a coprophagy lifestyle, they have get rid of this problem. So they have developed this method for this absorption of food materials from this digested cellulose. So coming to this this what pony or horses also. So in these organisms are also, after small intestine only, a large colon part is there. So this total colon part is inhabiting a lot of microorganisms. But these microorganisms are also digesting the food, but the digested food cannot be absorbed by this horsefly because it is after the small intestine. So many of the digested food materials, they will be sent to the exterior through fecal matter, and they are not useful for this animal. So in that way, ponies or horses, they require a lot of food, and especially they were fed with protein food like many type of different types of pulses. So as the pulses, they are having proteins. Proteins digestion will be done in the stomach region and small intestine region only, so that proteins can be absorbed by this animal. But starch or cellulose cannot be utilized by these animals. And why? Because these horses, they are not habituated for this coprophagy lifestyle as rabbits. So hence, ponies, they require a lot of food when compared to rabbits. So in this way, the digestion of cellulose takes place in rabbits and horses. So with this, today's class is over, and we'll meet in next class. Thank you.